took a break yesterday to compensate for that. On Sunday tomorrow at 1 p.m. I'll take a class. I'm keeping this at 1 p.m. so that you can give a test in the morning. Right? Okay. So class tomorrow at 1 p.m. we will continue. Today we are going to study Indian laws in detail. I was not very happy with the slides that were made. So I have remade some of the slides and remade this entire presentation. This is uploaded. The previous one pages are uploaded. Refresh the portal and you will see it. आज हम इंडियन लॉज करेंगे. जब हम इंडियन लॉज सारे पढ़ लेंगे तो आपको रियलाइज होगा कि एटलीस्ट 30 क्वेश्चंस हैव बीन आस्क्ड फ्रॉम दिस. Yeah, there will be a class tomorrow at 1 p.m. After that, let's get started. यार अगर तुमने बोल रखा है ना आया करा दूंगा YouTube पे, I'll record it on Sunday. How many times do I have to say the same thing? Like, फिर मैं कमेंट पढ़ना बंद कर देता हूँ. The same thing is being said over and over again. I've told you I'll record it on Sunday. I told you it get uploaded either on Sunday or on Monday morning. How many times do I have to repeat the same thing? बात हो रही है ना. अभी तक इसमें प्रॉमिस है that I've not delivered on. तो फिर ये क्या कमेंट है आया कब कराओगे कैसे होगा? कह रहा हूँ जब मैं संडे को करा दूंगा तो संडे को करा दूंगा. If I'm going to record it on Sunday, I will record it on Sunday. You either get it on Sunday evening or Monday morning. Yes, I know we said we'll do mapping today, but we didn't complete this. We didn't complete this last time. Without this, we cannot go to mapping, right? Okay, I'm going to ignore this now. All right, so let's start with the Wildlife Protection Act. Okay, in 1972 में it was in 1972 because of the Stockholm Convention, which was happening at this time. इसके related जो 42nd Amendment Act है, that we have already done, right? So 42nd Amendment Act में क्या क्या introduce हुआ? Article 48A was introduced. Wildlife was shifted to the concurrent list. Fundamental duties में 51A clause G that talks about the environment that was introduced. So now when all of that has been introduced, उसके साथ we have the Wildlife Protection Act. अब किसी भी एक्ट को जब हम आज पढ़ने वाले हैं, जो भी एक्ट हम पढ़ने वाले हैं उन पे 30 क्वेश्चंस आए हैं, मच मोर देन मैपिंग. ओके, तो किसी चीज की इंपॉर्टेंस हम उसके क्वेश्चन से जज करेंगे. सो व्हाट आई रिक्वेस्ट यू टू डू इज व्हेन यू रीडिंग एनी एक्ट, व्हाट यू आर गोइंग टू रीड, व्हाट वर द इंटेंट्स एंड पर्पसेस ऑफ दैट एक्ट. 1 ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या था. 1 2 व्हाट आर द बॉडीज दैट आर फाउंड अंडर दैट एक्ट, राइट, एंड 3 व्हाट इज द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ दैट एक्ट एंड हाउ इट इज यूज्ड टुडे. अगर हमें ये तीनों चीजें क्लियर है तो मोस्ट ऑफ द क्वेश्चंस वी कैन सॉल्व विद एंड वी विल सॉल्व देम एट द एंड ऑफ द क्लास टुडे. ओके, सो वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट वाज पास्ड इन 1972. The context was the Stockholm Convention. What was the Stockholm Convention? We will do when we are doing international conventions. Okay, so it was based on a resolution of the legislature of 11 states. What had happened is 11 states under Article 252, 20 policy device, right? No? Under Article 252, 11 states had said that we want the center to make a law on wildlife protection. So the center made the Wildlife Protection Act, and then finally, when wildlife was shifted into the concurrent list, this then became applicable to all states. Now, just remember, you have to remember this Article 252 for polity. And how will you remember this? Which it is that set of articles जहाँ पे the center can make a law on the state list. This is one of those conditions. There is a condition in Article 249, a condition in Article 250, a condition in 251, a condition in 253. Okay, I hope आपको ये याद है. नहीं है तो मैं आज करा दूंगा. But first, let's remember 252. How will you remember 252? 252 states, when 2 or more than 2 states give a resolution to the center that we need a law on the state list by the center, then the center can make that law. How will you remember 252? 2 or more than 2 states, when they make a resolution to the center, please make a law on the state list. The center can make such a law. पहले Wildlife Protection Act was made under this provision. Later, wildlife was shifted to the concurrent list. So once it was shifted to the concurrent list, it became applicable to all of them. So, all right. Now, what does this act provide for? What are the bodies, etc., that are there in this act? First, there is the State Wildlife Advisory Board. अब इसको याद करने की एक trick है. How will you remember any body that is under the Wildlife Protection Act? Most bodies that are under this act have the word wildlife in their name. With exceptions and those we discussed. But if wildlife is in the name of the body, most likely it is going to be established under the Wildlife Protection Act. in the Wildlife Protection Act, the first thing is the State Wildlife Advisory Board, what it does we will see. Okay, then the terms related to wildlife, this also we have seen. Definition of national park, definition of hunting, definition of habitat, definition of zoo, all of this is definition of wildlife sanctuary. This we have seen, it is under the Wildlife Protection Act. Now, so it regulates the hunting of wild animals and birds, this also we have seen, right? Then it talks about how national parks and sanctuaries can be established. ये कैसे establish हो सकती है, right? This we have seen. This can be established both by the state and by the center, by the state as well as the center, right? So ये हो रही थी under the Wildlife Protection Act. This we have seen. यहाँ पे लिखा है that state government can do it by passing a notification and central government can also do it under some cases. So this we already know that sanctuaries and national parks, both of these are made under the Wildlife Protection Act. The State Wildlife Advisory Board is made under the Wildlife Protection Act. ये थोड़ी थोड़ी चीजें I would expect कि आप साथ साथ लिखते जाओगे, नहीं तो this class would get very confusing. What else is happening? Trade in wild animals. इसका regulation is done under the Wildlife Protection Act. और इसी regulation को और strong करने के लिए there is an amendment that has happened to the Wildlife Protection Act this year. Okay, there is the regulation for trade in wild animals is also under the Wildlife Protection Act. To make these regulations better, there is an amendment to the Wildlife Protection Act that has happened in 2022. That is why I am teaching you this act in a lot of detail. Okay. Then the management of zoos, then certain penalties that would be imposed for violating this act, that is also there. Okay. Now, according to the act, the state government appoints the chief wildlife warden. Chief wildlife warden is also appointed by the states under this Wildlife Protection Act. Okay, and it is against the idea of taxidermy. Now, what does taxidermy mean? Taxidermy means that you are conserving or preserving wild animals as trophy. जैसे आपने देखा होगा कईयों के घरों में they have the heads of the wild animals as a trophy hung on the wall, right? Against there are provisions in this act against the idea of taxidermy. Moving on. So now taxidermy means by the states under this Wildlife Protection Act. Okay, and it is against the idea of taxidermy. Now, what does taxidermy mean? Taxidermy means that you are conserving or preserving wild animals as trophy. जैसे आपने देखा होगा कईयों के घरों में they have the heads of the wild animals as a trophy hung on the wall, right? Against there are provisions in this act against the idea of taxidermy. Moving on. Okay, so now this slide is very important because this slide has all the authorities that have been against the idea of taxidermy. Moving on. Okay, so now this slide is very important because this slide has all the authorities that have been established under the Wildlife Protection Act. इस पे बहुत बार क्वेश्चन पूछा है, so this is very important. अब कैसे याद करेंगे इसको? There is Wildlife Crime Control Bureau. This is the first thing. अब नाम में wildlife है, so we know, right? And since the act was also regulating the trade, in wild animals, so this could be one of the things. Okay. Then there is the Chief Wildlife Warden, which is appointed by the state government. It is appointed under the WDA. Then हमने देखा था कि act में management of zoos was one of the things. Zoological parks and zoos, उनका management was also given under the WPA. So the Central Zoo Authority is also established under the WPA. Then there is the National Board of Wildlife. Again, wildlife is in the name, तो सोचने की जरूरत नहीं है. National Board of Wildlife, this is headed by the PM. What it does, we will see. This is also established under Wildlife Protection Act. State Board of Wildlife, also established under the Wildlife Protection Act, and this is headed by the Chief Minister. National Tiger Conservation Authority. We have already read this body in Project Tiger when we were studying tiger reserves. This is also established under the Wildlife Protection Act. And there is a Tiger Conservation Foundation to be established by every state under this. Wildlife Protection Act. तो हमें इस स्लाइड में क्या देखना है? We have to see what all bodies are formed under the Wildlife Protection Act. Okay. अब देख, जहां-जहां wildlife crime control bureau, Chief Wildlife Warden, National Board of Wildlife, State Board of Wildlife, ये हम याद नहीं करेंगे because this is common. What are we going to remember? A, we are going to remember that there is a Central Zoo Authority. Okay, Central Zoo Authority is made under this act. तो ये चीज हमें याद रखनी है. Then there is a National Tiger Conservation Authority. This is also made under the Wildlife Protection Act. And logically, अगर आप देखो, Tiger Conservation Authority क्या कर रही है? It is protecting wildlife. What is Zoo Authority doing? It is protecting wildlife. These are logical things and it is under this act only. Okay, alright. अब देखो इस एक्ट को 2022 में अमेंड किया गया. That is why it's amended. So 8 times it has been amended so far and 2022 is the most recent amendment. Now you don't need to remember what has happened in every amendment. आपको याद करने की जरूरत नहीं है कि 1982 में क्या हुआ, 86 में क्या हुआ, 91 में क्या हुआ, 93 में क्या हुआ. ये सब याद करने की जरूरत आपको बिल्कुल भी नहीं. Okay, but हम फिर भी देख लेते हैं. तो for the progress we will see. हमें बस वो bodies और इसके जो एक्ट के जो प्रोविजन है वो याद करना जरूरी है. Right? So 1982 में what is it? Again, don't need to remember the year when this thing was added. This was basically about the capture and transport of wild animals. तो हमें बस ये पता होना चाहिए कि हाँ, there is something in this act about capture and transport of wild animals. अब होगा because it is the Wildlife Protection Act. In 2002, the provision for National Board of Wildlife was made. Okay. अब नेशनल बोर्ड ऑफ वाइल्डलाइफ क्या करता है? वाइल्डलाइफ नाम में वाइल्डलाइफ प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट के अंदर ही बना हुआ है. What does it do? There can be no alteration in the boundary of a national park or a wildlife sanctuary without the approval of the National Board of Wildlife. आगे की साइड में भी है. But National Board of Wildlife क्या करता है? अगर मान लो कोई नेशनल पार्क है, वाइल्डलाइफ सेंचुरी है, and somebody is saying that प्रोविजंस हैं वो याद रखना जरूरी है, राइट? सो 1982 में what they did, again don't need to remember the year everything was added, this was basically about the capture and transport of wild animals. तो हमें बस ये पता होना चाहिए हाँ something there is something in this act about capture and transport of wild animals, अब होगा because it is the wildlife protection act. Then in 2002 the provision for national board of wildlife protection, ठीक है? अब national board of wildlife क्या करता है? wildlife नाम में wildlife protection act के अंदर ही बना हुआ करता what does it do? There can be no alteration in the boundary of a national park or a wildlife sanctuary without the approval of the national board of wildlife. आगे भी साइड में है but national board of wildlife करता है अगर मान लो कोई national park या wildlife sanctuary है and somebody is saying that I want to change the boundary, I want to reduce the area, I want to reduce the border, if that thing is there, that cannot happen without the approval of the National Board of Wildlife. And who chairs this? It is chaired by the Honorable Prime Minister. Okay. Then in 2006, what was established? Club Wildlife was made. ठीक है? अब National Board of Wildlife क्या करता है? Wildlife नाम में Wildlife Protection Act के अंदर ही बना हुआ करता है. What does it do? There can be no alteration in the boundary of a national park or a wildlife sanctuary without the approval of the National Board of Wildlife. आगे भी साइड में चीज है. But National Board of Wildlife क्या करता है? अगर मान लो कोई national park या wildlife sanctuary है and somebody is saying that I want to change the boundary, I want to reduce the area, I want to reduce the border, if that thing is there, that cannot happen without the approval of the National Board of Wildlife. And who chairs this? It is chaired by the Honorable Prime Minister. Okay. Then in 2006, what was established? National Tiger Conservation Authority. ये हमें याद रखना था. This is under this act. Wildlife Crime Control Bureau. Of course, it is going to be ये तो logical है तो ये हम याद नहीं है. Then 2013 में some amendment of that imprisonment was improved. And अब देखो, अब जो मैंने आपको चीज last time समझाई थी. What is happening after 2006? Forest Rights Act has been passed. It has been realized that local communities are very important. In the management of forest, in the management of wildlife. So there was some amendment in 2013 that talked about the hunting rights of scheduled tribes in Andaman and Nicobar. So you can see that there is always a conflict between the rights of the indigenous communities, between the tribal rights, and our want or our desire to preserve wildlife, to preserve forests, to preserve animals. इसका बैलेंस बनाना ही is the main ethical dilemma when it comes to wildlife protection and forest protection. Okay. So again, you just need to know that there are some hunting rights protected here. 2013 में was not important. Okay. Now, under the Wildlife Protection Act, what are the power delineations? पहले ये कर लेते हैं. Then we will read the 2022 amendment in detail. पहला, जो Chief Wildlife Warden, ये हमने देखा था, who appoints this? The state government appoints this. Why? Because Chief Wildlife Warden is who? Chief Wildlife Warden is the Indian Forest Service officer. What is the Indian Forest Service? It is an all India service. So the way Indian Administrative Service, Indian Police Service are all India services, Indian Forest Service is also all India service. What is the condition of an all India service? That they are under direct control of the state when they are working, but the overall control is of the center. So जब वो state में work कर रहे होते हैं, control is of the state, but overall overarching control is of the center. So appointment of Chief Wildlife Warden will be by the state. Let's see how much quality you recall. Tell me the article number for all India service. Which article talks about making of all India services? ये आप मुझे comments में बताओ. Very good, yeah. Almost everyone has given the right answer. It is article 312 because there are only 3. 1 plus 2 is also 3 and there are only 3 all India services, IAS, IPS and Indian Forest Service. So जिसको याद नहीं है, you can remember from the number 3. Okay. Chief Wildlife Warden की बात हो गई. Now, Chief Wildlife Warden का काम क्या है? वो बताता है कि नेशनल पार्क के अंदर हमने क्या देखा था कि नेशनल पार्क के अंदर ह्यूमन एक्टिविटी इज सीवियरली रिस्ट्रिक्टेड. सो हु प्लेसेस दिस रिस्ट्रिक्शन? चीफ वाइल्ड लाइफ वार्डन. तो नेशनल पार्क के अंदर कौन सी ह्यूमन एक्टिविटी अलाउड होगी और क्यों ह्यूमन एक्टिविटी अलाउ हो रही है ये हम अभी देखते हैं, बट कौन सी ह्यूमन एक्टिविटी नेशनल पार्क में अलाउ होगी? हु गिव्स दिस आइडिया? चीफ वाइल्ड लाइफ वार्डन ऑफ द स्टेट. Now, he may permit the hunting of any wild animal if it has become dangerous. So, hunting भी इसी एक्ट से रेगुलेट हो रहा है. So, hunting of a wild animal who has become dangerous or is disabled, उसकी परमिशन दे सकता है चीफ वाइल्ड लाइफ वार्डन. चीफ वाइल्ड लाइफ वार्डन ये बात कर सकता है कि नेशनल पार्क के अंदर what human activity is going to be permitted, right? And we have already seen, this is very important, you can get confused here, both state and central government can notify national park and wildlife sanctuary, not just state government. We have already seen this, right? Okay. Now, this we have seen that the alteration of boundaries by states in boundaries of what? Boundaries of national park and wildlife sanctuary. National park and wildlife sanctuary की boundary अगर alter करनी है किसी state को, they need the permission of National Board of Wildlife. And who chairs National Board of Wildlife? Our Honorable Prime Minister. You know, आदत when you are speaking these words, get this in your habit. Right? In one mock interview, I said the Prime Minister recently said, and they lambasted me on it. They said that we would have given you 200, but after this we will not even give you 140. Because you have to get this in your vocabulary if you want to be a future bureaucrat. So when you mention, just say Honorable Prime Minister. Revise also like Honorable Prime Minister. Then always when you are writing, you will write Honorable Prime Minister. I am not in favor or against the current Prime Minister. It is just respecting the post. Okay. Now, this is a very important line that central government can declare any wild animal to be vermin. But this we will understand once we have understood the schedules of this act. We are coming to the schedules, हम आएंगे, right? But just for now, this is actually the 2022 amendment. The main feature of the 2022 amendment is that the schedules of this act have been changed. But schedules क्या हैं? What is the change? We'll just see. Right. अब पहले यहाँ पे I need to explain to you the concept of vermin. Okay. Vermin is those animals who you can hunt. Okay. There is not a blanket ban on hunting. Vermin are those animals who you can hunt. It is allowed for you to hunt these animals. They are therefore called this word vermin. Okay. So in this act, what is after the 2022 amendment? I'll just tell you the amendment and all the schedules. But what is the feature after 2022 amendment? That the central government can notify that this animal is a vermin and you are allowed to kill this. Now when will they do this notification? तब वो किसी animal को कहेंगे कि ये vermin. They are not happy with hunting. They are not facilitating hunting. But they will do it when the animal becomes a nuisance to humans. जैसे they recently declared nilgais as vermin in Bihar or monkeys, which monkeys? Rhesus monkeys, as vermin in Shimla. So in Shimla they said that these particular set of monkeys are vermin. You can do the hunting of these particular set of monkeys. Why? Because they were becoming a threat, they were becoming a problem and nuisance for human life. Human life के लिए problem होनी थी, humans के लिए problem होनी थी. So this notification can be done by whom? It can be done by the central government. Now what is schedule 2? We will just see. Okay. Central government can also shift entries from one schedule to the other. Again जब हम schedule देखेंगे तो समझ आएगा. This just says the central government can shift entries from one schedule to the other. And central government by a notification can declare any wild animal as vermin. Vermin means that you can hunt it. Okay. Alright. Okay. Now let me explain to you why the 2022 amendment has come. Okay. ये क्यों हुई है? So there is an international convention called the CITES. CITES stands for Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Flora and Fauna, obviously. So Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species. Now, when we were reading the objectives of the Wildlife Protection Act, did we not see that one of the objectives was trade in wild animals? Taxidermy को बंद कर रहा था. Trade in wild animals. Objectives of the Wildlife Protection Act. Did we not see obviously? So Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species. Now, when we were reading the objectives of the Wildlife Protection Act, did we not see that one of the objectives was trade in wild animals? Taxidermy को बंद कर रहा था. Trade in wild animals was one of the objectives of the Wildlife Protection Act. Now, when you become party to an international convention, whenever you become party to an international convention, you have the obligation to then implement that international convention. अगर आप उनके party बन जाते हो, you sign, you ratify an international convention, you are then obligated internationally to sign or to implement the features of that convention. So India ने CITES ये जो convention है, Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, इसके ऊपर इंडिया है साइन, इंडिया इज अ मेंबर. इसको इंप्लीमेंट करना इंडिया की एक रिस्पांसिबिलिटी. अब इस कन्वेंशन में क्या है, और तो जब हम इंटरनेशनल कन्वेंशन पढ़ेंगे तो हम इसको डिटेल में पढ़ेंगे, बट जैसे नाम से क्लियर है, दिस कन्वेंशन बेसिकली टॉक्स अबाउट इलीगल ट्रेड इन वाइल्ड. इट इज ट्राइंग टू स्टॉप द इलीगल ट्रेड इन वाइल्ड. सो इट हैज 3 अपेंडिसेस. अपेंडिसेस क्या है? अपेंडिक्स बेसिकली मींस लिस्ट. बुक के एंड में भी कभी-कभी आप अपेंडिक्स देखते हो. तो साइटिस के अंदर 3 अपेंडिक्स हैं. देयर आर 3 लिस्ट्स एंड ऑल दीस लिस्ट्स हैव लिस्ट ऑफ सर्टेन वाइल्ड एनिमल्स और प्लांट्स. So these appendices have a list of wild animals and plants जिनकी अलग-अलग लेवल की endangerment है, that are at the risk of being threatened or risk of being endangered, risk of vulnerable, risk of critically endangered. We will see what these terms mean when we study IUCN. So इस CITES convention में ये 3 appendices हैं, ये इन लिस्ट में लिखे. इसको implement करना इंडिया की responsibility थी. To properly implement the CITES, we have now amended our wildlife protection. यहाँ तक बात समझ आती? तो जो CITES में ट्रेड की बात हो रही है of wild animals, उसको प्रॉपर्ली इंप्लीमेंट करने के लिए वी हैव अमेंडेड आवर वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट, द ओरिजिनल एक्ट दैट टॉक्स अबाउट ट्रेड इन वाइल्ड एनिमल्स. ओके. ऑलराइट. नाउ कैसे होगा ये? सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट विल डेजिग्नेट Central government will do this to ensure that these provisions are implemented. Central government will designate two authorities. One is a management authority, two is a scientific authority. Now, what will the management authority do? देखो, यहाँ पे we are regulating the trade in endangered species. So you need an authority to give permissions to see that the trade is happening according to the law. So this management authority will grant import or export permits. Management authority will grant import or export permits. Okay, and scientific authority, what is it going to do? It is going to advise on these aspects. So scientific authority is going to give the scientific advice that this animal we can permit a little bit of trade. This animal we can't permit any trade at all. Okay, then the management authority is going to give the particular certificates or this permission for import, export and trade. The permits are going to be given by management authority. So हमने क्या सीखा? CITES is a convention that talks about trade in animals and plants. It has 3 appendices, means 3 lists, जिसमें वो protected animals की listing है. उसको implement करना was India's responsibility. To implement that, we amended our act that was talking about trade in animals. So after the amendment, what we did, we created 2 authorities: one management authority to grant permits and one scientific authorities to give advice. Okay. Now, if you are engaging in the trade of a scheduled specimen, schedule का wait कर लो, schedule I'll show you. But if you are engaging in the trade of a scheduled specimen, what do you need? You need a permission from the management authority. So you need that the management authority, जो इस act में से बन गई है after the amendment, the management authority must give you permission for trade in that particular that the schedule का wait in animals. So after the amendment, what we did, we created 2 authorities, one management authority. Scheduled specimen. Schedule का wait कर लो, schedule I'll show you. But if you are engaging in the trade of a scheduled specimen, what do you need? You need a permission from the management authority. So you need that the management authority, जो इस act में से बन गई है after the amendment, the management authority must give you permission for trade in that particular. Okay. Now, identification mark. अब ये concept समझते हैं. How will you get a permit to trade a particular animal? You cannot get a permit कि यार आप Royal Bengal Tigers को trade कर लो, जितने करने हैं उतने कर लो. This is not going to happen, right? At best, you are going to get the permit for one particular animal. That okay, this animal you can export or you can import, right? ऐसी ही बात करेंगे. अब उस animal का कोई नाम तो है नहीं, जैसे मेरा नाम शिविर है, but animal का तो कोई नाम नहीं है. So how do you identify that this is the same animal? You have an identification mark. जैसे for me, my identification mark is that I have a scar here from Machin, right? So if you did not know my name, even then you could identify. Similar, you will have an identification mark on the animal to be used by the management authority. Now, once this management authority itself gives you the permit, it will give you the permit on the basis of this identification mark. Okay. Obviously, you are forbidden to change the identification. आप change नहीं कर सकते हो identification mark को. ये नहीं कि you like if there is a scar, you cut that part of the animal or you harm it and then ensure that you are changing the identification mark. उससे आप trade ज़्यादा कर पाओगे, but that is a crime, right? So what have we understood? There was a CITES. CITES had 3 lists. All lists were talking about which animals are protected, किनमें trade हो सकता है, किनमें नहीं हो सकता. उसको रेगुलेट करने के लिए we made one management authority, one scientific authority. Management authority will do the management. Scientific authority will give the scientific advice. Management authority ने क्या था? That if you want to do any transaction or any trade in this particular animal, what do you need? You need to talk to us. You need to get a permission from us, and we will give permission on the basis of identification mark. And you cannot change this identification mark. Okay? All right. अब बात करते हैं शेड्यूल की. वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट में पहले 6 शेड्यूल थे. Earlier there were 6 schedules in the Wildlife Protection Act. What did these schedules say? Okay. So schedule 1 had animal species with the highest level of protection. That इनको बहुत ज़्यादा protection दी गई है, you cannot hunt them, etc. etc. Then again schedule 2 also had animals higher level of protection. जब हम schedule 1 से 4 पे जा रहे हैं, the level of protection is going down. इन चारों में animals के बस level of protection is going down. If one animal is critically endangered, उसकी बहुत कम species बची है, तो you will put it in schedule 1. अगर इतनी प्रॉब्लम नहीं है you put it in schedule 4, राइट? तो हम एक बार पढ़ ले ए लेवल ऑफ प्रोटेक्शन। जब हम शेड्यूल 1 से 4 पे जा रहे हैं द लेवल ऑफ प्रोटेक्शन इज गोइंग डाउन। इन चारों में एनिमल्स के बस लेवल ऑफ प्रोटेक्शन इज गोइंग डाउन। इफ वन एनिमल इज क्रिटिकली एंडेंजर्ड, उसकी बहुत कम स्पीशीज बची है, तो यू विल पुट इट इन शेड्यूल 1। अगर इतनी प्रॉब्लम नहीं है यू पुट इट इन शेड्यूल 4, राइट? तो हम एक बार पढ़ लेते हैं व्हाट वाज शेड्यूल 1। ये पहले की बात है। एनिमल्स विद हाईएस्ट लेवल ऑफ प्रोटेक्शन वर इन शेड्यूल 1। शेड्यूल 2 हायर प्रोटेक्शन देन शेड्यूल 2 बट लोअर देन शेड्यूल 1 एंड शेड्यूल 3, शेड्यूल 4 एंड शेड्यूल 3। शेड्यूल 3 protected species but sometimes hunting would be allowed. Schedule 4 prohibited but again penalized. Is left. And schedule 5 vermin, which you could hunt properly, like you could freely hunt. This is vermin. This was under schedule 5. 5 looks like V, so you can remember from here. Schedule 5 and vermin were there. 1, 2, 3, 4 में protected animals, but the level of protection was going down. And schedule 6 had protected plant species. So schedule 6 में क्या था? That you could cultivate these plants only after you took a permission. And who will you take the permission from? From the chief wildlife warden. Okay. So earlier there were these 6 schedules. पहले amendment से पहले इस एक्ट में ये 6 schedules थे। तभी बात वहाँ पे scheduled animals की हो रही थी। Any animal that is mentioned in one of the schedules becomes a scheduled animal. Okay. So there were these 6 schedules. Now what they have done? हमें क्या करना था? We had to implement the CITES. हम पहले amendment से पहले इस एक्ट में ये 6 schedules थे। तभी बात वहाँ पे scheduled animals की हो रही थी। Any animal that is mentioned in one of the schedules becomes a scheduled animal. Okay. So there were these 6 schedules. Now what they have done? हमें क्या करना था? We had to implement the CITES. So what have they done? Now they have made only 4 schedules. Okay, only 4 schedules. First schedule is animal species, highest level of protection. Second schedule, animal species, slightly lower level of protection. तो ये 4 को simplify करके they have made it to 2. पहले animals were being put into 4 schedules. Now they have put animals only in these 2 schedules. Highest protection, 1 level lower protection. Third, protected plant species. So schedule 6 था, that they have put here. जो 1, 2, 3, 4 थे, that they have put here in 1 and 2. And ये देखो, schedule 4 now talks about specimen listed under CITES appendix. What is CITES? International Convention for Protection of Animals. उसके अपेंडिक्स में, उसकी लिस्ट में कुछ प्रोटेक्शन होगी, तो वहां पे जो लिस्टेड है वो सेम लिस्ट हमने अपनी वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट में डाल दी। व्हाई? बिकॉज वी हैड एन ऑब्लिगेशन टू इंप्लीमेंट द CITES व्हिच वी हैड अंडरस्टूड। तो पहले 4 शेड्यूल, 4 शेड्यूल्स इनटू 2। यहां पे एनिमल्स को प्रोटेक्शन दे रहे थे, हाईएस्ट लेवल, लोअर, स्लाइटली लोअर, लोएस्ट, उनको डाल दिया इन दो में। प्लांट को डाल दिया यहां एंड फोर्थ बना दिया ऑन CITES। अब यहां पे व्हाट इज मिसिंग? द थिंग दैट इज मिसिंग इज द शेड्यूल ऑन वर्मिन। पहले एक शेड्यूल में वर्मिन की बात होती थी, राइट? नाउ देयर इज नो शेड्यूल ऑन वर्मिन। किसी भी शेड्यूल में वर्मिन का मेंशन नहीं है, तो अब वर्मिन कैसे डिक्लेयर होगी? नाउ लेट मी गो बैक इन द स्लाइड एंड शो यू। नाउ रीड दिस लाइन, you will be able to understand. Central government may by notification declare any wild animal in schedule 2 to be vermin. What is schedule 2? Slightly lower level of protection. तो जब अब सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट को वर्मिफिकेशन declare any wild animal in schedule 2 to be vermin. What is schedule 2? Slightly lower level of protection. तो जब अब सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट को वर्मिन डिक्लेयर करना होगा, वो क्या कहेगी? Okay, this animal is in schedule 2. I will declare it as vermin by a notification for a specified area for a specified time. I will declare it as vermin. Earlier what it would do, अगर मान लो शेड्यूल 2 वाले को वर्मिन बनाना था, it would shift it into शेड्यूल 5. But now they are just going to do a notification. Okay? और क्या? पे लिखा है one more line that we have to read. Central government can add, delete any entry from any schedule or transfer from one part of schedule to another part of the same schedule or from one schedule to another. Meaning, अगर मान लो कोई एनिमल इस टाइम पे शेड्यूल 2 में सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट को लगता है कि यार दिस एनिमल इज फेसिंग अ लॉट ऑफ थ्रेट, इसको उठा के दे कैन पुट इन शेड्यूल 1. अगर शेड्यूल 1 में है देखिए कि नहीं यार इसकी पॉपुलेशन इज नाउ नॉर्मलाइज्ड, इट्स नॉट सच अ बिग इशू, यू कैन पुट इन शेड्यूल 2. If you but now there is no schedule for vermin, so if you want to declare vermin it has to be in schedule 2 and you open a notification. तो हमें अभी तक क्या समझ आया अबाउट वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट? कुछ बॉडीज बन रही थी, वो मोस्ट ऑफ द बॉडीज के नाम में ही वाइल्ड लाइफ, दैट वी डोंट हैव टू रिमेंबर. उसके अलावा देयर वाज द सेंट्रल जू अथॉरिटी, देयर वाज द टाइगर कंजर्वेशन अथॉरिटी, वो हमने देख लिया. देन देयर आर सर्टेन शेड्यूल्स अंडर दिस एक्ट. व्हाई हैज दिस रैशनलाइजेशन ऑफ शेड्यूल्स बीन डन? टू इंप्लीमेंट द साइटेज अपेंडिक्स. व्हाई आर वी इंप्लीमेंटिंग साइटेज? बिकॉज़ वी हैव एन ऑब्लिगेशन. ओके, सो ये है वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट 2022 की. ओके, और wild animals will be declared as vermin by central government by the way of notification for any area for a specified period. So they can say for the next 1 year inside Shimla rhesus macaque or one rhesus monkey is now vermin. इसके अलावा हमने क्या देखा in this act? Management authority, scientific authority. This is also clear. Now other thing that has been modified is कि पहले जो violations थी वो बहुत कम थी, अब वो बढ़ा दी है, but this is not something you need to review. ठीक है, पहले जो violation की फाइन था वो कम था, अब फाइन बढ़ा दिया. This happens over time and any modification is done, right? So that's not a big deal. So continue. अब यहाँ पर एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज मैं आपको बताऊंगा. तो पहले आप मुझे बताओ कि यहाँ तक आपको क्लियर हुई. दिस एक्ट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. आई एम एक्सपेक्टिंग अ क्वेश्चन दिस ईयर फ्रॉम वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्शन अमेंडमेंट एक्ट बिकॉज़ 2022 में ही इसका अमेंडमेंट हुआ है, राइट? सो स्टिल हियर आर द थिंग्स क्लियर टू यू. What is the level of protection in CITES? We will understand when CITES will study. Wait for it. Okay. अब देखो, अब ये जो लाइन है ना, ये आप अपने मेंस में GS2 में यूज कर सकते हैं. Okay, let's see. Chief Wildlife Warden. Who appoints this? State government. Where is wildlife placed? Wildlife is placed in the concurrent list. Who is the Chief Wildlife Warden? Indian Forest Service officer. What is Indian Forest Service? All India. यहाँ तक तो क्लियर है ना? ये तो हमें पता है बात है. Chief Wildlife Warden का क्या काम है? He has to manage national park, manage sanctuary. So this management and protection of sanctuaries will be in accordance with the management plans prepared by the central government. ये notification change हुआ है. देखो, this is the change in federalism. पहले था कि Chief Wildlife Warden को state appoint करेगा and state will manage, और Chief Wildlife Warden appointed by the state will manage the national park and sanctuary. अब क्या हुआ? अब बोला उन्होंने कि नहीं, Chief Wildlife Warden को state appoint करेगा, but how are the management going to happen for sanctuaries? It is going to be happening according to the plan that is prepared by the central government. So this is what? This is the tendency of centralization. That central government's impact is increasing. Centralization की tendency है. Chief Wildlife Warden is now going to be bound by the plan that has been prepared by the central government. Right. इसमें एक और बहुत important चीज है. Sanctuaries falling under the scheduled area. अब मुझे बताओ which schedule? Which schedule talks about scheduled area? Not tribal area. Scheduled area. इसके साथ साथ also tell me what the 10th schedule is. This is question A. Which schedule talks about scheduled areas? Question B is what does the 10th schedule talk about? Quality यही रिवाइज करा मुझे यहाँ पे. बताओ. Good. Faisal, Nimbods, Samar, Purva, Shantanu, Hardik. Good. Fifth schedule talks about the scheduled areas and 10th schedule talks of the anti-defection law. ठीक है? तो इस लॉ में आप क्या कह रहे हैं कि अगर एक सैंक्चुरी की मैनेजमेंट है, that is going to happen as per the central government. But sanctuaries that are falling in scheduled area or where there is Forest Rights Act applicable. Forest Rights Act में हमने क्या देखा था? We have not studied it. We will study it in detail. But what did we see in the Forest Rights Act? We saw that certain rights that is going to happen as per the central government. But sanctuaries that are falling in scheduled area or where there is Forest Rights Act applicable. Forest Rights Act में हमने क्या देखा था? We have not studied it. We will study it in detail. But what did we see in the Forest Rights Act? We saw that certain rights are given to the tribals. और scheduled area भी उसी से related है, fifth schedule. तो जहाँ पे tribal rights हैं, जहाँ पे fifth scheduled area, अगर वहाँ कोई sanctuary है, अब वहाँ sanctuary में क्या बात होगी? Tribals will also be living there. Wildlife is also needed to be protected. So now there is a conflict of interest. This is not exact definition of conflict of interest. There are two competing interests. Okay, this is an ethical conflict rather. This is an ethical conflict because there are two competing interests. One is tribal rights, second is wildlife protection. So in these areas where there is a scheduled area or there is FRA 2006, what are we going to do? The plan, this management plan, it is not only going to be made by the central government, it is going to be made after consultation with the Gram Sabha. So in fifth scheduled area or in FRA 2006, where it is applicable, where the Forest Rights Act is applicable, the Gram Sabha will also be consulted in the making of the management plan. ताकि दोनों इंटरेस्ट साथ में देखे जा सके. What important thing did we learn here? That as per FRA 2006, we will study FRA in detail, but as per Forest Rights Act 2006, the Gram Sabha is an important body because Gram Sabha के consultation से ही this management plan is going to be made in these areas. Okay. Now, other than this, what is going to happen in the Wildlife Protection Act? There is an exemption for live elephants, and this has been very severely criticized. What does this exemption say? That if you are going to transport live elephants for religious or any other purpose, and you have an ownership certificate, right? So then you can do transport and transfer of live elephants for religious purposes or for other purposes. If you have a ownership certificate means you have a certificate that says that this animal belongs to you. उस cases में there are some exemptions in this act given. मतलब आपको penalty नहीं लगेगी, आपका exemption आपको मिल रहा है. So this is also a provision under the Wildlife Protection Amendment Act. Now why this is happening? It is for political reasons, so let's not go into that. Okay. Then central government is also empowered to regulate or prohibit the import, trade, possession, construction. Proliferation, obviously prohibit करेंगे हम इसको invasive alien species को. अब ये concept भी हम पढ़ चुके हैं, we have understood what the invasive alien species are. So again, because and where is this provision going to be? Obviously, it's going to be in the Wildlife Protection Act because invasive alien species they harm the wildlife. So there is an exemption for live elephants. There is a speak of invasive alien species. Now, last thing that we have to study is it empowers central government to declare areas adjacent to national park and wildlife sanctuary as conservation reserve. Last time we read conservation reserve and community reserve. Purposefully, I did not tell you who makes conservation reserve and who makes community reserve because I wanted to explain in the amendment. Conservation reserves are those where the land is owned by the government. Community reserves are those where the land is owned by the community. Earlier, both conservation reserve and community reserve, central government to declare areas adjacent to national park and wildlife sanctuary as conservation reserve. Last time we read conservation reserve and community reserve. Purposefully, I did not tell you who makes conservation reserve and who makes community reserve because I wanted to explain in the amendment. Conservation reserves are those where the land is owned by the government. Community reserves are those where the land is owned by the community. Earlier, both conservation reserves and community reserves were being owned by who? Were being declared by who? The state government. Conservation reserve को भी state government declare करता था, community reserve को भी state government declare करता था. But after this amendment, conservation reserves can be declared by central government also. Okay, central government can declare conservation reserves after this amendment. Community reserve में there is no change. Okay, so as you can see, this entire legislation is a centralizing legislation. There is a centralization tendency in this legislation. Good or bad, that is not for us to discuss here. We will discuss. are reading governance and polity, but centralization tendency is not very clear in this act. Now, here, May 2022, GS2, this question was asked. While the national political parties in India favor centralization, the regional parties are in favor of state autonomy. जब आपको एक डायरेक्टिव वर्ड मिलता है comment या let's say elucidate या illustrate, when you get this sort of word, you are mostly expected to give examples. And trust me, when you are thinking of this, अगर मैंने आपको अभी वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट नहीं पढ़ाया था, आपका दिमाग ही नहीं चलता एनवायरमेंट की, राइट? सो इसीलिए आई गेट अ लॉट ऑफ कमेंट्स सेइंग कि सर प्री में कॉन्फिडेंस आ रहा है, दैट्स ग्रेट, सो प्राउड ऑफ यू, बट लगता है कि सर के मेंस में नहीं होगा, राइट? मेंस मैंने कोई आंसर राइटिंग नहीं करी, आई एम नॉट प्रिपेयर्ड. भाई, इफ यू हैव गुड नॉलेज एंड यू स्टडी प्री वेल, मेंस इज जस्ट अबाउट नॉलेज मैनेजमेंट. यू नो अबाउट वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट, बस आपका दिमाग चलना चाहिए यहाँ पे कि वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट इज आल्सो एन एग्जांपल. इट बिकम्स अ यूनिक एग्जांपल. एक वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट से आप जीएस2 के क्वेश्चन में एग्जांपल दे सकते हैं, राइट? So don't worry about the means right now. I'm getting a lot of questions because I think the confidence of the people is increasing in prelims once they are able to solve the questions of science and tech and environment. So they're getting a lot of questions about the means. Don't worry, we'll do it. After class के end में I'll also show you another trick how I can use environment knowledge in other means questions. Okay. All right. Now, last thing that we have to study about this amendment act. It says that if you have a captive animal, एक होता है wild animal. Wild animal is one that exists in the wild. Okay. एक होता है captive animal. Captive animal would mean कि वो मेरा है, मैंने उसे capture किया हुआ है, I own it. Right, that would be called the captive animal. So it says that if you have a captive animal, you can voluntarily surrender it to the chief wildlife warden. आप voluntarily you can give up the captive animal you have. क्या फायदा होगा इससे? Why would anybody give it up? ये बात हर जगह लिखी है, हर करंट अफेयर्स में कि voluntary surrender ना हो. Why this provision is introduced is not written anywhere. ये इसलिए है भाई ताकि you don't do abandonment. अगर आपको अपना captive animal रखना है, if you want to control it, that's great. But let's say you say कि यार मेरे से manage नहीं हो रहा. What will you do? You will abandon it, and then that animal will, बेचारे animal will die. So what you need is you need this provision of voluntary surrender. No compensation will be paid to you, but you can give it to the chief wildlife warden to avoid abandonment of that animal. मेरा animal था, captive था, now I'm giving it to the government. I can't manage it anymore. Let the government manage it, and this process would be facilitated. Other than that, there is a provision that देखो कितना बढ़िया law है. Arms licenses will not be granted to any person residing in 10 kilometers of a sanctuary except under the permission given by chief wildlife warden. तो आप देख ही रहे हो chief wildlife warden is a key figure है. क्यों बनाया ये law? Sanctuary के अगर आप 10 kilometer पास रहते हो, you are the most likely person to do hunting. So what did the government say? We will not give you arms license. Right? Hunting अपने आप ही होता है. This is good logic. Then the state board of wildlife. There was a national board of wildlife. National board of wildlife was headed by who? The honorable prime minister. Right? So the state board of wildlife was headed by the honorable chief minister. Now they are permitted to constitute a standing committee. This is not that important. हाँ, they can make a standing committee for certain day-to-day functions. So now they are permitted. To constitute a standing committee. This is not that important. हाँ, they can make a standing committee for certain day-to-day functions. So now let us come to the Indian Forest Act. Okay, I hope things are clear till here. I hope it is going well. समझ आ रहा है, Wildlife Protection Act समझ आया, right? This is very important. That is why I have taught in detail because even if you look at page 65 or anything else, बहुत detail में दिया हुआ है, but they have just listed down the features. You will not understand what is happening. So I have tried to put everything in context. Once we study CITES, it will be in even more context for you. It will become even easier to understand because CITES हम पढ़ें, right? 1927, who passed it? The British. The British have passed the Indian Forest Act. What did they want? Timber. उनका एक ही सिंगल पॉइंट एजेंडा था that हमें चाहिए timber from the forest. We need to build railway. We need to build wood carvings. We need to build furniture, and we need to support our army. So they put this legal framework for timber. Forest Act भी, this was a continuation of the Indian Forest Act of 1878. ये आपको last class में समझाया था. It was passed by the British. And what were they doing? They were systematically excluding the indigenous communities from the wildlife, from the forest, so that they could get access to timber. So what did they do? They made three types of forests. One was reserve forest, two was protected forest, third was village forest. Okay, these three things they had for indigenous communities from the wildlife, from the forest, so that they could get access to timber. So what did they do? They made three types of forests. One was reserve forest, two was protected forest, third was village forest. Okay, these three things they had made. ये हम लास्ट टाइम बात कर चुके थे कि reserve forest, protected forest, village forest they have made. अब इनके differences भी उसका है. Indian Forest Act में the Indian government after independence has continued to use the Indian Forest Act, but there has been one amendment in 2017. Now what has this amendment done? They have removed the word bamboo from the definition of tree. अब इस बात की क्या significance है? देखो, आपने term सुनी होगी something called minor forest produce. You must have heard a term called major forest produce. इसकी भी डिटेल में हम आज की स्लाइड में देखेंगे. Major forest produce क्या होता है? Major forest produce is basically what is coming from trees. This is a very rudimentary classification, but just giving you an idea. What is coming from trees is major forest produce. So timber, as such, is major forest produce. So if you notify that something is a tree, it becomes major forest produce. Major forest produce, still the government has the main right. Minor forest produce, we have given the right to tribals. Tribals and indigenous communities, we have given the right to control minor forest produce. So अब झगड़ा किस बात पे होगा? What is minor forest produce? What is major forest produce? Right? तो हमने क्या किया in 2017? We amended the Indian Forest Act to remove the definition of tree that was talking about the word bamboo. तो हमने tree की definition में से bamboo हटा दिया. So what would that mean? It would shift bamboo from timber-based major forest produce. From timber-based major forest produce, it shifted bamboo to minor forest produce. But not all bamboo. Not all bamboo. Which bamboo? Bamboo that was growing in non-forest area. Because देखो, अभी यहाँ पे झगड़ा क्या था इसको समझो. Tribals they use bamboo very extensively. Bamboo, let's say, is growing in the forest. Okay. Now in the forest where bamboo is growing, it is notified that bamboo is a tree. So when they take the tree or bamboo tree, what does it become? It becomes major forest produce. Now, if they are taking major forest produce, they are violating the law. And tribals generally tribals are exploited communities. So the forest bureaucracy, they would exploit the tribes because they were violating the law. So what did the government do? They said, okay, it is their right to collect bamboo. Don't go into the forest and collect bamboo, but everywhere else where there is bamboo, you can take it. So they modified the definition of what a tree means, right? And that definition was the word bamboo was removed. Which bamboo? Bamboo growing in non-forest areas. In non-forest areas, they said that okay, this is not a tree. Then it sort of became minor forest produce, and then the tribals could collect. Okay, so ये वही conflict of tribal management and the management of wildlife, the management of protected area. Okay, so ये वही In non-forest areas, they said that okay, this is not a tree, then it sort of became minor forest produce, and then the tribals would collect. Okay, so ये वही conflict of tribal management and the management of wildlife, the management of protected areas, that is continuing, and we are going to see that conflict. We are going to read Indian Forest Act, then we are going to read Forest Conservation Act, then we are going to read Forest Rights Act. Okay, all right. अब Indian Forest Act में क्या क्या था? I told you there is reserve forest, protected forest, and village forest. So in reserve forest, what is the government doing? Reserve forest, who notifies it? State government. मैं आपको बस ये this line I expect you to read once on your own, but I'll just tell you what is important here. Main चीज क्या है? Reserve forests have the maximum protection. They are notified by the state government, and this is the most important line. All activities in a reserve forest are prohibited unless they are permitted. Right? So by default, all activities are prohibited. When the state says, okay, these 1, 2, 3 activities you can do in a reserve forest, only those activities become permitted. Reserve forests have the highest level of protection. Okay? Reserve forests have the highest level of protection. Okay. Now, there is also a provision of issuing, like there needs to be a forest settlement officer in every state so that he can make inquiries about reserve forests, any law violation, etc. And he has the power. Of a civil code. This forest settlement officer is also an Indian Forest Service officer. Okay. So reserve forest under Indian Forest Act, it has the maximum protection, and all activities are prohibited unless they are permitted inside the reserve. So next is protected forest. Again, who declares protected forest? State government. This is the first thing that is important. Second thing, all activities are permitted unless they are prohibited. What does this mean? कि normally सारी activities allowed in a protected forest unless the state government says okay these things are prohibited. Protected forest में क्या था? Everything is banned unless they are allowed. Protected forest में क्या है? Everything is allowed unless those things are specifically banned. सबसे ज्यादा प्रोटेक्शन किसको मिलती है? रिजर्व फॉरेस्ट को, फिर मिलती है प्रोटेक्टेड फॉरेस्ट को, फिर फाइनली मिलती है विलेज फॉरेस्ट को. कौन बता? कौन सा फॉरेस्ट क्या है? स्टेट गवर्नमेंट. ओके. नाउ लास्ट इज विलेज फॉरेस्ट. तो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट क्या करती है? They assign to the village, they assign to any village community the rights over any land that is either reserve forest or protected forest. So they give the community, they give this particular village community the rights over certain land. Okay. तो अब ये क्या हो रहा है? We are involving the village community. So when the Britishers were making this act, Indian Forest Act, what did they do? उन्होंने कहा कि जो सबसे बढ़िया फॉरेस्ट है, make those reserve forest, make them our property. जो उससे बेकार फॉरेस्ट है, make them protected forest. उसमें थोड़े बहुत राइट्स लगेंगे. And the worst forest where we have no use, that we give to the villagers, and then you say, see, we have given you forest. Why are you in any case revolting? Right? So this was the original idea. We have continued that idea. Of course, now we don't think of exploitation, we think of conservation, we think of Mother India, but that same idea is continuing. So what you need to remember here, 3 levels of forest made under Indian Forest Act. सबसे ज्यादा प्रोटेक्शन रिजर्व फॉरेस्ट, उसके बाद प्रोटेक्शन प्रोटेक्टेड फॉरेस्ट, उसके बाद विलेज फॉरेस्ट. कौन बताता है? स्टेट गवर्नमेंट. ओके. फॉरेस्ट. सबसे ज्यादा प्रोटेक्शन रिजर्व. उसके बाद प्रोटेक्शन प्रोटेक्टेड फॉरेस्ट, उसके बाद विलेज फॉरेस्ट. कौन बताता है? स्टेट. ओके. फॉरेस्ट. नाउ लेट्स कम टू द फॉरेस्ट कंजर्वेशन. इंडियन फॉरेस्ट एक्ट में इतना ही था. अब फॉरेस्ट कंजर्वेशन एक्ट. फॉरेस्ट कंजर्वेशन एक्ट देखो, लुक एट द गिवन. व्हाट इज हैपनिंग? इंडियाज फॉरेस्ट कवर इज डिक्लाइनिंग, इट इज फॉलिंग. सो नाउ व्हाट डू वी नीड? वी नीड एन एक्ट टू प्रोटेक्ट द फॉरेस्ट. उसके लिए आई है फॉरेस्ट कंजर्वेशन. तो फॉरेस्ट कंजर्वेशन एक्ट अगेन एंटी 17A ऑफ लिस्ट 3, व्हिच इज अगेन कंजर्वेशन ऑफ वाइल्ड लाइफ एंड फॉरेस्ट. तो एक कंकरेंट लिस्ट के अंदर ये लॉ है. ओके. एंड इट इज मेंट, it is facilitated by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, which has moved the subject of conservation of forest to the list 3. So it became a concurrent list. That is why the center could make laws on it, and it is made to fulfill our obligations under Article 48A. What was 48? 48 Hadial San. It was about animal husbandry and modern scientific methods preventing the slaughter of milch cattle. What is 48A? It is conservation of wildlife. So उसके अंदर वाइल्ड लाइफ एंड फॉरेस्ट, उसके अंदर we made Forest Conservation Act in 1980. Amendment has So in 1976, we made 48A. To give teeth to 48A, we made the Forest Conservation Act. Forest Conservation Act क्या कहता है? So first thing, it was trying to consolidate the laws related to forest. Okay, so all the laws that are related to forest, it was trying to consolidate. Then who is going to administer? Forest officer. यही administer करेंगे, forest में open करें. Now, what did it say? देखो भाई state government के पास rights. Again, the state government had the right. This is reserved forest, this is protected forest, this is village forest. So what did this act say? This act says that prior approval of central government is required for diversion of forest land for non-forest purpose. So if you want to shift forest land for non-forest purpose, what is non-forest purpose is also defined in these acts. Okay. So if you want to divert forest land for non-forest purpose, means you want to cut down the forest. इस चीज को बहुत अच्छे से लिखा हुआ है यहाँ पे. But what is actually means is क्या forest काट रहे हो? You are taking forest land and using it for non-forest purpose. So if you are diverting forest land for non-forest purpose, you require the approval of the central government. So who gets the rule making powers? Central government. Again, what happens? Centralization. Okay. क्या करने के लिए है ये? फॉरेस्ट कन्वर्जन. राइट. So it talks of four types of forest. Forest Conservation Act types of four types of forest. एक तो रिजर्व फॉरेस्ट, ये तो मैं पता ही. Central government. So who gets the rule making powers? Central government. Again, what happens? ऑथराइजेशन. ओके, क्या करने के लिए है ये? फॉरेस्ट कंजर्वेशन, राइट. तो इट टॉक्स ऑफ फोर टाइप्स ऑफ फॉरेस्ट. फॉरेस्ट कंजर्वेशन एक्ट टाइप्स ऑफ फोर टाइप्स ऑफ फॉरेस्ट. एक तो रिजर्व फॉरेस्ट, ये तो मैं पता ही है, एक विलेज, एक प्रोटेक्टेड. फोर्थ वो बात करता है ऑफ प्राइवेट फॉरेस्ट. नाउ व्हाट इज प्राइवेट फॉरेस्ट? मान लो the land where the forest is there is not owned by the government, then what? Right? If the land that is not like where the forest is there, the government का owned है ही, so it becomes privately owned forest or private forest. So originally the Forest Conservation Act passed हुई थी, it had provisions for reserve forest, provision for village forest, provision for protected forest, but for private forest it said कि ठीक है ये तो privately owned land है, do what you want. But then there was a case called the T. N. Godavarman case in the Supreme Court. So in the Supreme Court there was a T. N. Godavarman case, and what did Supreme Court say in T. N. Godavarman case? It said that the Forest Conservation Act of 1980 is meant to prevent deforestation. फॉरेस्ट कंजर्वेशन एक्ट बनी है ताकि फॉरेस्ट ना कटे, ये बोला सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने. सो इट सेड कि अगर यही एम है कि फॉरेस्ट ना कटे, इट डज नॉट मैटर व्हाट द क्लासिफिकेशन ऑफ लैंड इज, नेचर ऑफ लैंड क्लासिफिकेशन डज नॉट मैटर. सो बी इट अ प्राइवेट फॉरेस्ट, बी इट अ फॉरेस्ट एरिया, बी इट फॉरेस्ट कवर, बी इट ट्री आउटसाइड फॉरेस्ट, एनीथिंग दैट सैटिस्फाइज द डिक्शनरी डेफिनेशन ऑफ फॉरेस्ट विल बी अंडर द फॉरेस्ट कंजर्वेशन. दिस इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट केस कॉल्ड द टी एन गोदावरमन केस. अभी आपको लग रहा होगा ओवरलोडिंग ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन है, बट इस सारी इंफॉर्मेशन से मैं आपको आज क्लास में दिखाऊंगा कि आप एक ऐसे भी लिख सकते थे न्यूज़ में. राइट, so just stick with me. T. N. Godavarman case में what did the Supreme Court say? That Forest Conservation Act आपने बनाई है कि फॉरेस्ट ना कटे. So we don't care if it is reserve forest, we don't care if it is protected forest, we don't care if it is private forest. A forest is a forest is a forest. So anything that satisfies the dictionary definition of forest will be under the Forest Conservation Act. तो यहाँ देखो, provisions made for the conservation of forest must apply to all forests irrespective of the nature of ownership and classification. The court also said that forests will not just be areas recorded as forests. ये recorded forest area का क्या चक्कर है हम अभी देखेंगे when we read the Indian State of Forest report, right? But court ने क्या कहा कि सिर्फ वो areas नहीं जो recorded as forest, but all areas which are similar to the dictionary definition of forest. Dictionary definition जो forest की satisfy करे उन्हें हम forest कहते हैं. हम लोग forest को कैसे define करते हैं? We will see that in the Indian State of Forest report. Okay, now so under the Godavarman order, the T. N. Godavarman case, which is about forest, that any forest, regardless of their classification, will be under the Forest Conservation Act. Who will identify the forest? State government. Identification का काम किसका? State government का. Law कौन बना है? Central government. Right? Can you see what, like how this act and how forest management and wildlife is a blip on Indian federalism and how federalism is sort of compromised when there is talk of forest conservation. So states will notify, but under Forest Conservation Act, who will make rules? Central. So now this you can read that there is a forest advisory committee and that gives the decision to fell forest or not. But basically the idea is clear under the T. N. Godavarman case that any particular forest, regardless of its classification of land ownership status, it is going to fall under the ambit of the Forest Conservation. Now, इस act के अंदर they have made the Forest Conservation Rules 2022. They were introduced only last year. This act is in current affairs. That is why I have explained the Forest Conservation Act in this detail, because this is in current affairs. It was asked a lot last year also in the means, so there's chances that they will be asked in the future. Basically इस Forest Conservation Rules में क्या है? According to Forest Conservation Rules, अब देखो Forest Conservation Act में क्या? That if you are diverting forest land for non-forest purpose, अगर आप forest काट के उसका वहाँ पे कुछ करना चाहते हो, तो central government will give approval. तो ये approval कैसे मिलेगा? This approval is mentioned under the Forest Conservation Rules. So it is making three committees. One is the advisory committee, one is the regionally empowered committee, and one is the screening committee. इन committees के कुछ function है. ये committees basically ये Forest Conservation Rules को implement करेंगी ताकि if there is any diversion from the forest, it will be done. Okay. Now, basically they are talking about certain time frame in which forest projects will be cleared, and the approval procedure is such that first you will get in principle approval, then you will get final. So in principle approval is that most in principle principally we are agreed with your proposal, and final approval is then given by the central government. So ये तीन committees हैं, you can just read what they are doing, right? Basic idea you have understood what is happening, so this is easy to read. These are the three committees and this is their function. Okay. Now, what next thing has happened is, अब मैंने आपको क्या कहा? You said diversion of forest land for non-forest purpose. यही बात बन रही है. Forest land को divert किया जा रहा है for non-forest purpose. Now, what is forest purpose and what is non-forest purpose? ये भी तो define करना पड़ेगा. क्या zoo बनाना, like making a zoo, is it a forest purpose or is it a non-forest purpose? This also has to be defined. So, in this definition, what they have said is that if you are making a zoo or a rescue center, earlier it was considered that this zoo is a non-forest activity. So, earlier, let's say ये forest, this was forest area, and इसमें यहाँ पे you had made a zoo. So, what was assumed that this zoo is a non-forest activity. If you are making a zoo here, you are diverting forest land for non-forest purpose. So you will need what? You will need clearance from the central government. Right? समझ आ रही है बात? Forest Conservation Act में क्या था? You can't divert forest land for non-forest purpose. You can't cut down forest. तो अब क्या हुआ कि मान लो यहाँ zoo is there, so what does it become? It is a non-forest thing, so you will need central government approval. Now what they have done is they have said that the zoo making, it is not a non-forest organ, it is a forest. इसकी definition ही change कर दी. तो अगर अब आपको forest के अंदर zoo बनानी है, you do not need a permission under the Forest Conservation. You get an exemption under the Forest Conservation Act because अब अगर आप zoo बना रहे हो यहाँ पे, if you are making a zoo here, it is not considered that you are diverting forest land. It is considered कि हाँ ये तो आप forest purpose ही कर. तो जब आप forest land में forest purpose कर रहे हो, there is no role of the central government, there is no role of the Forest Conservation. Okay, so this is the idea of the Forest Conservation Act and the Forest Conservation Act. Now comes the concept called compensatory afforestation. What does compensatory afforestation mean? What does compensation mean? मैंने कल क्लास में ली, इसके लिए I am compensating on something. What does it mean? कि अगर कोई चीज मैं कर रहा हूँ, which let's say I took a break, I did not deliver what I had to, so I am compensating, right? Compensatory afforestation means अगर आपने कहीं पे forest काट दिया, if you did deforestation somewhere, तो आप क्या करो, आपने यहाँ से तो फॉरेस्ट काटा, दिस फॉरेस्ट वाज देयर एंड यू कट दिस पार्ट ऑफ द फॉरेस्ट, नाउ यू प्लांट सिमिलर नंबर ऑफ ट्रीज समवेयर, दैट वुड बी कॉम्पेंसेटरी एफॉरेस्टेशन. सो दिस इज व्हाट कॉम्पेंसेटरी एफॉरेस्टेशन मींस. अब कॉम्पेंसेटरी एफॉरेस्टेशन का क्या प्रोविजन है कि इफ यू आर डाइवर्टिंग फॉरेस्ट लैंड, इफ फॉरेस्ट काटा, दिस फॉरेस्ट वाज देयर एंड यू कट दिस पार्ट ऑफ द फॉरेस्ट, नाउ यू प्लांट सिमिलर नंबर ऑफ ट्रीज समवेयर, दैट वुड बी कॉम्पेंसेटरी एफॉरेस्टेशन. सो दिस इज व्हाट कॉम्पेंसेटरी एफॉरेस्टेशन मींस. अब कॉम्पेंसेटरी एफॉरेस्टेशन का क्या प्रोविजन है कि इफ यू आर डाइवर्टिंग फॉरेस्ट लैंड, diverting forest land means forest land for non-forest purpose, cutting forest land using it for non-forest purpose. So if you are diverting forest land, right, in a state which is hilly or mountainous, hill state का concept आपको इकोनॉमी या गवर्नमेंट स्कीम्स में पढ़ना पड़ेगा, उनकी रेवेन्यू शेयरिंग भी अलग होती है, ये सेंट्रली स्पॉन्सर्ड स्कीम्स, राइट. आपने पढ़ा होगा सेंट्रल स्पॉन्सर्ड स्कीम्स में नॉर्मल स्टेट के साथ रेवेन्यू शेयरिंग है 60-40, एक पर्पस. So if you are diverting forest land, right, in a state which is hilly or mountainous, हिल स्टेट का कंसेप्ट आपको इकोनॉमी या गवर्नमेंट स्कीम्स में पढ़ना पड़ेगा, उनकी रेवेन्यू शेयरिंग भी अलग होती है, ये सेंट्रली स्पॉन्सर्ड स्कीम्स, राइट. आपने पढ़ा होगा सेंट्रल स्पॉन्सर्ड स्कीम्स में नॉर्मल स्टेट के साथ रेवेन्यू शेयरिंग है 60-40, इन हिल स्टेट्स इट्स 90-10. ओके, सो इफ यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट अ हिली स्टेट और अ माउंटेनस स्टेट जहां पे ऑलरेडी द फॉरेस्ट कवर्ड इज मोर देन 2/3, एक पर्टिकुलर स्टेट, इस स्टेट में ऑलरेडी 67% फॉरेस्ट है, यहां पे अगर आपने कोई फॉरेस्ट काटा तो यू कैन डाइवर्ट दिस टू अ डिफरेंट स्टेट. मतलब जो कॉम्पेंसेटरी एफॉरेस्टेशन है वो नेसेसरी नहीं है कि आप इसी स्टेट में करें. इफ व्हाट आर द कंडीशन, ए इट इज अ हिल स्टेट and B it already has 67% of geographical area under forest cover. Second is if it is a normal state, any other state. Okay. Now here you have cut the forest. अब आइडियली तो आपको यहीं पे कॉम्पेंसेटरी एफॉरेस्टेशन करनी चाहिए. अगर आपने इस स्टेट का फॉरेस्ट काटा है तो आप यहीं पे कॉम्पेंसेटरी एफॉरेस्टेशन करो. बट इट सेज दैट इफ इट इज अ नॉर्मल स्टेट और ऑलरेडी इस स्टेट का फॉरेस्ट कवर 33% से ज्यादा है, तो यू कैन डू कॉम्पेंसेटरी एफॉरेस्टेशन इन अ डिफरेंट स्टेट. और उस डिफरेंट स्टेट की क्या कंडीशन है कि यहां पे फॉरेस्ट कवर शुड बी लेस देन 20%. सो लेट्स से यू कट सम ट्रीज इन अरुणाचल प्रदेश. अरुणाचल प्रदेश में फॉरेस्ट कवर इज क्लोज टू 80%. तो जरूरी नहीं है कि आप कॉम्पेंसेटरी एफॉरेस्टेशन अरुणाचल प्रदेश में करें. You can do it in some other state जहां पे forest cover is less than 20%. Let's say in Haryana. Okay. Same thing. Let's say you take another state like Maharashtra. Maharashtra does not have 33% forest cover, but assume कर लेते हैं कि महाराष्ट्र में forest cover is 40%. Okay. Then if you cut trees in Maharashtra, you can do compensatory afforestation in a different state where the forest cover is less than 20%. Let's say Haryana. अब इससे प्रॉब्लम क्या है? इससे प्रॉब्लम है भाई कि एक जगह तो तुम काट रहे हो मैंग्रोव, दूसरी जगह तुम मिला रहे हो साल के. It's not the same thing. If you were doing compensatory afforestation in the same place, it would be the same. If you are diverting it, it would be a problem. But this provision has been introduced, so इसका काफी criticism हुआ. Indian Express ने भी इस पर बहुत कवरेज दी है जनवरी में फरवरी. That's why I have added this. Okay. और तो ये बात समझ आई. फॉरेस्ट कंजर्वेशन एक्ट में कॉम्पेंसेटरी एफॉरेस्टेशन के लिए ये कंडीशन है कि अगर आपने उसी स्टेट में फॉरेस्ट कंजर्वेशन फॉरेस्ट की कॉम्पेंसेटरी एफॉरेस्टेशन नहीं करनी तो व्हाट यू आर सपोज्ड टू डू. नाउ हाउ डज कॉम्पेंसेटरी एफॉरेस्टेशन, इसके फंड्स कैसे काम करते हैं, इसकी अथॉरिटी क्या है, इसके लिए देयर इज अ कॉम्पेंसेटरी एफॉरेस्टेशन फंड एक्ट ऑफ 2016. ओके. This act establishes a body called Compensatory Afforestation Fund Management and Planning Authority, right? तो ये एक एक्ट है टू compensatory afforestation. उसमें it makes an authority called CAMPA. What does CAMPA do? It is compensatory afforestation fund management and planning. तो अब मैं आपको बताता हूँ how it basically works. मान लो ये एक फॉरेस्ट है, ठीक है, मेरे को एक माइनिंग प्रोजेक्ट करना था इस फॉरेस्ट में, मैंने यहाँ से लेट्स से आई कट 100 ट्री, ओके, नाउ आई कट 100 ट्री, तो मैं पहले क्या बोलूंगा, देयर इज अ कांसेप्ट कॉल्ड नेट प्रेजेंट वैल्यू. हमने देखा था that we are all capitalistic. So what do? We even though the ecosystem we have assigned the value, we have assigned certain money. तो हम क्या करते हैं, ट्रीज को एक नेट प्रेजेंट वैल्यू देते हैं कि एक ट्री की वैल्यू इतनी है. तो लेट्स से वन ट्री इज वर्थ रुपीज 100. ओके, लेट्स से दैट वन ट्री इज वर्थ रुपीज 100. ओके, तो मैंने 100 ट्रीज काटे, सो व्हाट वैल्यू हैव आई टेकन अवे? आई हैव टेकन अवे रुपीज 10,000. 100 into 100. So I have taken away rupees 10,000 from the government. तो मैं क्या करूंगा, गवर्नमेंट को on the basis of how many trees I have and on the basis of the trees net present value, I will give the money to the government. अब गवर्नमेंट क्या करेगी, गवर्नमेंट को 10,000 रुपीज देंगे, मैं ये 10,000 रुपीज किसको दूंगा? I will give to the center. सेंटर पे भी एक कैंपा अथॉरिटी है, कॉम्पनसेटरी एफॉरेस्टेशन फंड. फंड कहां से आया? देखिए, दिस इज द फंड. अब इस फंड की मैनेजमेंट और प्लानिंग कैसे होगी? कॉम्पनसेटरी एफॉरेस्टेशन फंड मैनेजमेंट एंड प्लानिंग अथॉरिटी. This is there at center level, this is there at state level. So I will give this 10,000 rupees to the center campa. What will the campa do at the center? It will keep 10,000 rupees itself. I take 10,000 rupees, I give it to the center. Center will keep 10% of it. So center will keep 1,000 rupees and 90% it will give to the state. The state will then do compensatory afforestation. Why is center keeping the 10% for management, planning, monitoring? And this, then state will do compensatory afforestation from the fund. Who is giving the fund? The person who is doing the mining. So if you want to, let's say, cut some forest, you will be asked to pay certain money. That money will go to the center. Center will keep 10%, give 90% to the state. The state will then do compensatory afforestation. Center will do monitoring. This is how the compensatory afforestation fund management and planning authority (CAMPA) Act works. So there is a national compensatory afforestation fund. There is a state compensatory afforestation fund. Fund कहाँ से आ रहा है समझ आ गया? अब important चीज. It is actually established in the public account of India. Right? Public account of India. What this means? This you have to core economy. You should know what public account and consolidated account are. So in public account of India, we have established this fund. What this means? This you have to core up at work. State will then do compensatory. Afforestation, center will do monitoring. This is how the compensatory afforestation fund management and planning authority (CAMPA) Act works. So there is a national compensatory afforestation fund. There is a state compensatory afforestation fund. Fund कहाँ से आ रहा है समझ आ गया? अब important चीज. It is actually established in the public account of India. Right? Public account of India. What this means? This you have to core economy. You should know what public account and consolidated account are. So in public account of India, we have established these funds. They will receive payments for compensatory afforestation from net present value of forest and any other specified payment, etc. Like national fund will receive 10%, state fund will receive the remaining 90%. And where can these funds be used? They can be used for treatment of catchment areas, natural generation, forest management, wildlife protection, all of these forest and forestry activities. For this, you could use this compensatory afforestation fund. Okay. Alright. Now we are coming to the forest rights act. 5 questions have been asked from forest rights act in past 3 to 4. So this is an important piece of education. So I'll give you 5 minutes. Take some time. I work in the clear so far. I know you're confusing. There are so many laws. Right, you must have seen, so it's not possible to confuse them now, but I'm trying to make it as simple and go as easy to you. That is why I have kept this class only for laws. So it's a question बहुत आसान. So we have done the Wildlife Protection Act, we have done the Indian Forest Act, we have done the Forest Conservation Act, we have done the Compensatory Afforestation Act. Now we are going to do the forest rights, right? Alright, so now you take a break for 5 minutes. I'll start the timer. Okay, and then we resume with forest rights. Apparently, the one pager was not uploaded. So I told them they're doing it. Okay. Bar, you don't need to start the comment. I also know, I will do it. They're uploading. Okay. Alright. So next is Forest Rights. Update. Forest Rights Act, few words. Right? Why did the Forest Rights Act come? It came because we wanted to give back to the forest dwellers, to the scheduled tribes, to the tribals, their rights of managing the forest, and they realized कि इनके बिना हमसे नहीं होगा. Right? We will not be able to help or to conserve the forest without the presence of scheduled tribes. So what is this act called? It is called the Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition of Forest Rights Act, or simply the Forest Rights Act. Now, this act provides for the restitution of deprived forest rights across India. इंडिया में जो फॉरेस्ट राइट्स हमने हटा दिए थे, उनकी रेस्टिट्यूशन हम करते हैं. ना कैसे कर रहे हैं? इंप्लीमेंट कौन करता है? मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ ट्राइबल अफेयर्स. ऑफ कोर्स लॉजिकल सी बात है कि मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ ट्राइबल अफेयर्स करेगी, बट अब यहाँ आप कॉन्फ्लिक्ट देखो. ट्राइबल राइट्स देनी है मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फॉरेस्ट करनी है, फॉरेस्ट मैनेजमेंट करनी है मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एनवायरमेंट, फॉरेस्ट एंड क्लाइमेट चेंज. तो अब देखो, लुक एट द प्रॉपर में इंप्लीमेंट कौन करता है? मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ ट्राइबल अफेयर्स. ऑफ कोर्स लॉजिकल सी बात है कि मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ ट्राइबल अफेयर्स करेगी, बट अब यहाँ आप कॉन्फ्लिक्ट देखो. ट्राइबल राइट्स देनी है मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फॉरेस्ट करनी है, फॉरेस्ट मैनेजमेंट करनी है मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एनवायरमेंट, फॉरेस्ट एंड क्लाइमेट चेंज. तो अब देखो, look at the problem here, right? Of course there is going to be a problem because there is a conflict. This ministry wants the tribal rights money. What does Ministry of Environment want? That environment conservation. So एक तरफ तो environment conservationists who will say कि नहीं यार, it is important to conserve the forest. They still don't understand that it is due to the tribals that the forest will get conserved. On the other side, there will be the. So this will be the idea. This is why the Forest Rights Act was passed, so that this conflict could be reduced. Now, किस पे applicable है? This act is applicable on the forest dwelling scheduled tribes and other traditional forest dwellers who have been residing in forest for generations. Now, अब आप ethics का पेपर दोगे नहीं. This is what? This is you are correcting a historical injustice. Historically, we have done a huge injustice with the tribals. Right? We took them away from their traditional homes. We displaced them. The British did it, and then the Indian government continued for some time. But thankfully, we have now restored them. So ये है historical injustice का correction. So when you are reading things, they are not only for the subject you are reading them for. उनकी बहुत wide application होती है और यही means again. Okay? Alright. Now, so when you are are reading things, they are not only for the subject you are reading them for. उनकी बहुत wide application होती है और यही means again. Okay? Alright. Now, what does the FRA or the Forest Rights Act recognize? एक तो individual rights, of course. दूसरी चीज है community rights. Tribal rights में क्या है? They don't live only as individuals. They are not as selfish as we are. They live as a community. Mostly, I am not generalizing. Most tribals would live as a community. So they have certain community values. Community value of protecting the forest, ethics of conservation, ethics of subsistence. So these community rights को भी recognize किया गया. So there are not only rights that are given to the forest, to the tribal, but also the rights that are given to the tribal community as a whole. So there are community rights as well as individual rights. So what rights are there? Right first is to conserve or manage the forest. Okay, ये तो होगा. Then there is intellectual property, IPR याद करो, and traditional knowledge. Told you there is a traditional knowledge physical library that we are making. We are talking about biodiversity. मैं आपको बताया था biodiversity से related है traditional knowledge. So intellectual property rights and traditional knowledge rights, जो भी biodiversity से या whatever is there in the forest, वहाँ पर जो traditional knowledge है, वहाँ पर जो rights हैं, उनका भी राइट हम दे रहे हैं अंडर द फॉरेस्ट राइट. ओके, नाउ द डिस्प्लेस कम्युनिटीज एंड राइट्स ओवर डेवलपमेंटल एक्टिविटीज, ये मैं आपको भी समझा रहा हूं. ओके, एंड द ग्राम सभा, ये राइट्स किस लेवल तक मिलेंगे आपको, नहीं मिलेंगे, ये सारे डिसाइड करने के लिए जो बॉडी है दैट इज द ग्राम सभा. ये क्यों किया गया? आई यूजुअली से दैट फॉरेस्ट राइट्स एक्ट इज अ वंडरफुल लेजिस्लेशन बिकॉज़ ऑफ थिंग्स लाइक दिस. अब देखो यार, देयर आर अनएजुकेटेड ट्राइब, है ना. आप कहो अनएजुकेटेड ट्राइबल को कि आपको राइट्स तो मिलेंगे, बट कहां जाके लेंगे? डिस्ट्रिक्ट मजिस्ट्रेट के पास. So will he be able to stand in front of the district magistrate and talk about his rights? So कितना भी अच्छा डीएम हो, उस ट्राइबल को भी करना है. So what did we do? We said ग्राम सभा is what? It is the community or it is the body that has all the people in a particular village. तो हमने क्या कहा कि आप ग्राम सभा से ही राइट्स लें. ग्राम सभा is the first originator. सबसे पहले कम्युनिटी फॉरेस्ट राइट्स, इंडिविजुअल फॉरेस्ट राइट्स अगर आपको मिलने हैं, ग्राम सभा डिसाइड करेंगे. उसके बाद वी विल क्रिएट स्टेट लेवल कमिटीज एंड बॉडी. तो जो अनएजुकेटेड ट्राइबल हैं, दे हैव टू गो टू द ग्राम सभा, जो उनके खुद के लोग हैं, so they will not use that statement. Then of course the decision of the Gram Sabha can be appealed in front of a court. Final तो नहीं हो सकता है decision. So आगे it will be done. So this is what आगे इट विल बी डन ग्राम सभा डिसाइड करेंगे उसके बाद वी विल प्लेस स्टेट लेवल कमिटीज एंड बॉडी तो जो अनएजुकेटेड ट्राइबल्स हैं दे हैव टू गो टू द ग्राम सभा जो उनके खुद के लोग हैं so they will not use that then of course the decision of the gram sabha can be appealed in front of a court final तो नहीं हो सकता है decision तो आगे it will be done so this is what what this is the idea of